How's it going, everyone? And welcome to the channel. Today is a pretty special day because it is Patch Notes Day, my dudes. Well, it is, but it kinda isn't. Now, I have in front of me a 6-page document of all of the changes and additions for 8.2, but also a big warning saying these patch notes are subject to change. So on that note, it is preliminary Patch Notes Day, my dudes. 8.2 is bringing a lot to the table. There's new weapons, new features, minor faction overhauls, the return of the BMP technical, gunplay changes, and more. So sit down, buckle up, and I'm going to take you through as much of these as I can, and the important ones that you need to know about. But you better make sure you subscribe to the channel, as I was up past 2 in the morning working on all of this. So to keep things simple, because my brain is smoother than the chin of an MEA soldier, we start with the new weapons. There are 4 new weapons added here. The M39 EMR, the AUG, the M110 suppressed, and the Mosin carbine. I use the term new rather loosely, as the Mosin and AUG used to be in squad, and they've just been brought back within different roles. The M39 EMR replaces the M38 for the US Marines, the AUG replaces the M4 Simon Offense rifle kit for PMCs, the suppressed M110 replaces the old M110 for the US Army Marksman kit. And the Mosin carbine is now a new Raider kit for the Insurgents, which is great and all, but where's the Mosin squad leader kit? Come on! Next up, we're moving on to the balance update of this patch. This is all aimed at the battle groups or battalions, wherever you want to call them, and finding better balance within the game through all of the battle group types, and there is a lot of these, but I'll try to keep this simple. Starting with Australia. Combined Arms has had 1 PMV removed, Mechanized now has 4 ASLAVs instead of 3, and the 2 PMVs that they had are now the remote turret 50 variants. Canada gets an extra Coyote on Armoured, and Russia has had one of their BMP-1AMs removed from their Armoured column. PLA Armoured have had both of their ZBD-04s removed and replaced with the ZSL-10. Interesting change. Turkey now gets 2 extra ACV-15 APCs. One is an M250 cal and the other is an MG3. But their Combined Arms now gets 2 PARS-3 IFVs, I'm guessing that's the 25mm variant, because they replaced the 2 PARS-3 with the M250s. US Marines also get 4 LAV-25s for motorized, and Australia, Canada and US Marine get 3 wheeled IFVs instead of 2 with combined. PLA Marines now get 4 ZTD MGSs instead of 3 for combined, and that is a lot of serious firepower. And they get 2 CSK HJ8s for armoured. But now we're moving into some really nitty-gritty changes. However, these are extremely important. Starting up, they've increased the tank respawn timer on all mechanized battle groups from 15 minutes to 20, except for Insurgent, Turkey and Militia, as they remain the same at 15 and 10 minutes respectively. The Canadian Leopard has had their main ammo rack moved from the front of the tank to the rear and made smaller to try and make it less vulnerable. Turkish logistics trucks have had their supply count dropped from 3,000 points to 2,000, so the default when you get in them is now 1,000 ammo on 1,000 construction, so keep an eye on that if you enjoy building multiple habs. And PMCs no longer get placeable mortars on their fobs, but instead they get 2 mortar technicals. I quite like that change, that's pretty good. You know, I kind of feel like I'm reading out football results doing this. US Marines 3, Western PMCs 1. Speaking of US Marines, they've actually undergone a very big change in their light infantry battalion. But furthermore, I think this change could go right through the Marines in the future. Basically, everyone now gets the M27 IAR as their standard issue rifle. That's squad leaders, riflemen, medics, grenadiers, and light anti-tank. And they all come with the optic attached. Now this may seem cool and all, but the lack of iron sights, I feel, is a slight cause for concern. Myself and many others voiced our concerns about this change in the most recent playtests, and our feedback was taken on board, so maybe we will see a few more iron sight options come back in future patches. But the general consensus is not everyone enjoys the optics. There's certainly a lot of people who can't run them due to performance issues, but having no irons puts them in the same bag as the British Armed Forces and in some aspects the Canadian Armed Forces. And that's because everyone's got an optic, you've got no one with close quarter options. And a lot of maps have CQB areas, you can find yourself in a hell of a pinch here. This is also why I'm very vocal about why I severely dislike playing as the Brits, and I actively avoid playing them. Light anti-tank only has one option, and that is the AT4, and the Grenadier gets the M320. The two assault rifle classes also get the M27. One has an iron sight, oh look, an iron sight kit, finally, and the other has an optic. Both of these kits get bipods. Heavy anti-tank no longer uses the SMAW, but they get the M3 Mors or Carl Gustav, wherever you want to call it. And their Humvees have been replaced with MAT Vs. And 3 of them have got toes on them. And that's because they've lost their M1 Abrams. Yes, this is a light infantry battalion with no tank whatsoever. See, I told you this stuff was important. You've really got to think about what you're doing before you vote now. Russia Light Infantry can now build 2 anti-air turrets. I feel this is getting ready for the wave of CAS helis that we will be seeing in the near future, and this is a huge one if you enjoy playing as Turkey. All Turkish Land Forces battalions now get a heavy anti-tank kit. It is the RPG 7v2 with tandem rounds, but that's honestly better than nothing. Middle Eastern Alliance have also undergone some changes. Squad leads, medics, riflemen and lats now get access to the Iranian KLT, which is their copy of the AKMS. A new marksman role is available that uses the old SVD, and their automatic rifleman gets an RPK with a drum mag. So, you're going to get some mixed audio whilst playing against Middle Eastern Alliance now. It's not all going to be G3s across the board. VDV also gets a new marksman role, and this uses the AS-VAL with a PSO scope. Oh, that takes me back to Tarkov. And here's a turnout for the books. Insurgent forces are no more. Yes, that's because they're now called Middle Eastern Insurgents. With this fancy name change, they get some new kits and new stuff to play with, but there is far too much to read out here without making this video 35 hours long, so just pause the video in 5 seconds and have a read yourself. Russia and the VDV have been added to the Sanchin Islands to mix things up. The invasion game mode has undergone a few changes. Their ticket count for capturing an objective has been reduced from 130 tickets to 125. But on top of this, all invasion layers will now have a 5 flag layout. The first 2 to 3 objectives are generally closer together to reduce instances where attackers need to maneuver the entire team and set up new fobs to attack the next point, unless it's across more open terrain. It's also attempted to reduce instances where areas of thick concealment or urban areas lie between the first flags, which generally bog down attackers and cost them high amounts of tickets to clear. However, the 4th and 5th objectives will generally be more challenging to attack. So if you enjoy building a super fob, Offworld has just told you right there, build it on the 4th or 5th objective. You can thank me later. Most invasion layers will no longer have forward vehicle spawns for defenders and will only have infantry spawns closer to the first objective. But I hope they've checked these properly, because some of these forward spawns, air quotes, are an absolute mile away from the first point. And some invasion layers will now have multiple potential lanes to increase replayability. Good, but with the whole use of squad lanes and squad maps, everyone's going to know where it goes anyway. Right, now we've got the changes out of the way, it's time to move into the main event, and that is the gunplay adjustments. This was done to make weapons feel more responsive overall. The idea is to remove punishment in the form of weapon destabilization that players receive after movement, create more standardized weapon archetypes, which will lead to distinct playstyles for players to master, improve the effectiveness of machine guns whilst not bipoded, that's quite a key point there, and improve the control of submachine guns at short distances, making them more ideal for close quarters and flanking. On paper, this already sounds really good. Now, as we all know, guns are split into different categories within squad. You've got light machine guns, medium machine guns, battle rifles, automatic rifles, SMGs, and pistols. Now, the changes are generally across the board for each of these types of weapon, but there's been a few individual changes as well. But on the whole, some will probably still seem better than others. Here's some key points from all of this. The M249s have had their MOA reduced from 12 to 6. Battle rifles have had the heavy recoil curve removed and it's been replaced with a standard one. And the ADS time is now between 0.3 and 0.55 seconds, with a much faster time to stabilize. Now I got to try these in a playtest recently and I'll get into that shortly. The M4 Simon Offense rifle performs better in close quarters but won't be as effective at range. That's kind of how the M27 IAR used to be. SMGs have been standardized across the board and pistols have also had a massive rework. Now I've only skimmed over a few various things here because a lot of the other main points are the same through all the weapon types. They've all been standardized to a point, with all of them being easier to operate, both aiming and at hipfire. All weapons are faster to stabilize after ADSing. The main thing is, everything just feels much tighter and less random. You know, it doesn't feel like you're fighting the game anymore. The ethos and effects of the ICO still remains. There's been no changes made to suppression and its effect whatsoever. But the weapons and handling just feel a lot more fun to use now, and it's nowhere near as frustrating. It all feels so much smoother, and it really does reward those who look after their stamina. You know, if you try to shoot with no stamina, it's still as wobbly as it is currently in game. But with 90% or full stamina, it's just so much sharper. Even the battle rifles. I hate the TLF MPT-76. I've always disliked that ever since it was implemented with the ICO. But I tell you something, it is absolutely fantastic now with these changes. Shooting at range feels much better as well, especially follow-up shots. There's no mention about anti-tank launchers, but they do feel marginally better. Well, that could have just been me performing a bit better that day. Okay, we're almost getting to the final stretch here, and that's bug fixes and map updates. Server admins can now cycle between a few different options that allows them to communicate and hear players on both teams. So you guys better start behaving. They fixed the PMC Loach emergency recover push from being too strong. Good, so no longer when you go to push your helicopter and it bounces into a tree, it shouldn't blow up because you are the incredible bulk. They fixed the alignment on the PMC M16 Whirlpool with the Moopold scope, and they've also fixed the AK-101 Pushko rifle to now use a 5.56 mag instead of 5.45. Mutahar RAS V2, they have fixed an issue with Team 2's middle helipad destroying helicopters directly after spawning. Good, because that's a bloody ticket drain and it was annoying. And these next two are massive. They have made specific attenuation adjustments to vehicle exterior engine sounds. Volumes now decrease quicker further out, but it is still just as audible as before. But they have also increased the FOB radio audio radius to be heard at 50 meters. Yes, radios can now be heard from 50 meters out. Now, I feel this may have been done to kind of counter them from being hidden behind repair stations, and that might be slightly my fault putting that on YouTube. But my main concern with this change is it could potentially promote lone wolf combat engineers just driving around listening for radios. Instead of listening to the radio, they're listening for radios. However, I'll hold my judgment for when this goes live, but they felt far too loud during the playtest. And there we have it. The preliminary, yes, preliminary, subject to change. Not all of this might get through, I don't know, something might break. This is just what it is. For Squad 8.2. My guess is this update will be early next week, so that will be the start of December if you're watching this video in December. Offworld will naturally post the patch notes when everything is tied up and ready, and when they do that, that generally means it's update tomorrow or maybe even that day. What do you like most out of all of these though? Or what's really caught your eye? Let me know down in the comments below or in my Discord server, which is a complete dead meme, but I'm trying to revive it. Thank you all for watching. Sorry I couldn't include all of the patch notes, but I didn't want to be sat here waffling for the next 372 hours. Link to the preliminary patch notes in the description down below. Take care, and I'll catch you in my next video. Good night. Oh my god, it's 20 minutes long. What?